Hi, my name is John Zimmerman, creator of Elementa Arcanum. In this series of videos, I am teaching you the rules of the game. Elementa Arcanum has 3 different rule sets of progressive complexity. The second set of rules, known as the full game, is the set I recommend playing if you are already familiar with deck building games, or if you have already played the basic game and want some added complexity. I taught the basic game rules in another video, so if you haven't watched that video, click the link being displayed now. Let's get started with learning the full game rules. The full game modifies the initial setup. Do the basic game setup, but now you will also separately shuffle the tier 3 spells as well. Put that tier on the bottom of the arcane library. Notice that some of the tier 3 spells include this funny looking Ultima card. I'll explain that later. For now, let's start with talking about a small change to the refresh phase. The refresh phase gets one more step added in the full game, the Obsolescence step. The first time a spell of a new tier enters the magic shop, during the refresh phase of the following round, all spells of the prior tier are banned from being in the magic shop for the rest of the game. Removing and replacing those spells happens during this step. In this example, the 5, 5, and 6 here all belong to phase 1. So they are removed from the game, and new tier 2 spells are dealt out to replace them. Next, there are 3 major changes to the combat phase. The full game adds a second attack type called Twinblast. Twinblast allows the attacker to add a second element to their attack, but with a restriction. As suggested by the name, the damage dealt by both elements must be equal. Therefore, as an example, if a mage attacked with these cards, instead of dealing 6 fire and 4 water, they would instead only deal 4 fire and 4 water. The excess 2 fire is lost due to the Twinblast restriction. To block a Twinblast, the same rule regarding opposite elements applies, but the math can be a little tricky now since carryover can be involved. Let's look at an example. In this example, the attacker is attacking for 4 fire and 4 wind. All the wind damage is blocked since 6 is greater than 4. There's 2 defense points left over, but when we apply that to absorb the fire damage, it's only half as effective. Therefore, the given defense is not enough. There's still 1 point of fire damage left. This 2 of fire will do the trick. Now we have a full block. It wouldn't be fair to just add a new attack option without giving something to the defender. For defense, we have Last Resort. Now, like the name implies, this is not a tool to pull out often because it's costly. To even activate Last Resort, the defender has to pay a star. Stars are precious in this game, so the reward better be a good one. And it is. For the cost of a star, the defender discards any number of spells out of their hands and then draws that many spells from their deck. This is powerful because the defender knows what elements the attack consists of before deciding to last resort, and which spells to discard. When used properly, this has the possibility to turn around what may have been a lost game. The final change to the combat phase has to do with what happens when a defender loses combat. In the basic game, the attacker just wins 1 star, and nothing else happens. In the full game, there's a little bit more to it than that. In addition to the attacker winning a star, the defender also loses 1, if they had any. In compensation, the defender can choose to draw 1 spell after the combat is over. Finally, in the full game, the attacker may also be eligible for some bonus stars based on how much excess damage was dealt. For every 10 damage after the first point of damage, the attacker gains 1 more star. Note that the defender only loses a maximum of 1 star per defeat. The bonus stars come from the bank. With these added stars in the game, the full game win condition is the first mage to 5 stars, instead of the 3 in the basic game. So in this example, the attacker is dealing 11 points of wind damage. If the defender does nothing here, they will lose a star, and the attacker will win one. And also, since 10 extra points are dealt after the first point of damage, the attacker would win one bonus star. Now that we've gone over all the new combat phase rules, let's talk about research. Whereas in the basic game, you can only purchase, the full game adds a second action choice, called Forgetting. Forgetting spells removes existing spells in your possession from the game. The benefit of doing this is to eliminate your weaker spells that aren't competitive anymore. Note that you cannot take the Forget action if it would result in you having less than 10 total spells between your hand, deck, and discard pile. To forget a spell, choose a spell from your hand or discard pile. The cost of forgetting that spell is equal to the power shown in the corner of the card. Spells of the opposite element count for their full amount towards this cost. Others use the value shown on the sides of the card. When forgotten, take that spell and place it face down in a pile off to the side. It's called your forgotten pile. Then add any spells used to pay for the forget into your discard pile. You can purchase and forget any number of times in any order you like before you end your research turn. In this example, the player could use the 4, 3, and 2 to purchase this 8 of fire. And then use this 4 of wind to forget either of these 2s in their discard pile. Alternatively, this 4 could be used to get rid of the 2 of earth. So don't forget that you can remove spells from your own hand from the game instead of using your discard pile. Due to forgetting, it's beneficial to fan out your discard pile while you play. This way, you can easily keep track of what cards you'll be able to forget. One other thing that's different about the full game is what happens when the magic shop empties. Unlike the basic game, in the full game, all players continue taking research turns normally, but purchasing is no longer possible. However, forgetting is. Keeping in mind, of course, the minimum of 10 total spells between each mage's deck, hand, and discard pile. Additionally, the full game adds what is, in effect, a sudden death type rule. In the case that a mage's research phase ends with no spells in the arcane library or magic shop, count that mage's total number of spells. If that number is exactly 10, that mage gains a star. Now that you know most of the full game rules, we can get back to talking about Ultima. Ultima is the most powerful spell in the game. It is a wild card that can be any element. It acts a little differently between attack and defense. You can use it to add 20 damage of a single chosen type when attacking, but can block 20 damage of one or more types on defense. Let's look at an example combat. You can see here a Twinblast where Ultima is being used on the earth side to boost its damage up to exceed the amount being dealt with water, which is 28. When attacking, Ultima's damage cannot be split up, which would be the more ideal situation here, but 56 is still a ton of damage. Luckily, the defender also has an Ultima. On defense, Ultima's blocking power can be split up across the two different elements. That's the only way we can achieve a block for 58 damage here, which is a full block. Next, let's talk about Ultima's implications for the research phase. When purchasing Ultima, all spells used to buy it count for half of their power. So for example, here we could use these cards, turning them sideways. That would be a total of 20 points, which would be enough to buy this Ultima. Ultima itself cannot be used for purchasing spells. However, Ultima is the best spell in the game for forgetting spells. Ultima counts for the full 20 points towards the forgetting of any spells, and it can be used to forget multiple spells at the same time. For example, Ultima could be used here to forget the 7 and 4 of wind at the same time. It could also be used to forget the 10 and the 4, or the 10 and the 7. However, it couldn't be used to forget the 10, 7, and 4 because that adds up to 21, and Ultima provides only 20 points. One final note here about public information. At any point, one mage is allowed to ask another the number of spells in that mage's hand, deck, or forgotten pile. They can also ask to see that mage's discard pile. And that's the full game rules. I hope that wasn't too complicated. If you would like to watch an example game with these rules, click the link being shown now. If you're interested in how to do a multiplayer or team game, click the second link. Enjoy playing Elementa Arcanum.